Hello, my name is Hal Stead. This is my vlog. Today I'm going to talk to you about Benjamin Franklin. I've been on this kick and reading about Benjamin Franklin. I found this book. It's called Benjamin Franklin, America's Original Entrepreneur, Franklin's Autobiography for Modern Times, adapted by Blaine McCormick. One thing that was really interesting to me is that when he was 10 years old, well, you know what? I've heard it said just recently that in America, in the schools in America, you really couldn't get a decent education after 1960. I can tell you right now that the things that I've actually learned about America, about politics, about the Constitution, about the Declaration of Independence, about the Founding Fathers, about Shakespeare, about great authors, about music, all of the things that I've learned that really mean something to me, I learned after school, or I learned on the side. So this is what I'm going to read this to you right now. Benjamin Franklin says at 10 years old, okay, this is taken from this book, and this is on page 14, and it says, Franklin says, I can't recall a time when I could not read. Furthermore, it was the opinion of all his friends. All his friends. Who are they talking about here? I think it's his father. It was the opinion of all his friends that I would do well in studies. My uncle Benjamin approved of the decision and promised to give me the many volumes in which he had copied down sermons in his special shorthand. I stayed at the Latin school not quite 1 year. During that time, I not only rose to the head of my class, but I advanced into the class ahead of me. My father, however, changed his mind about my education. Given the size of his family, the cost of a college education, and the distinct possibility of my getting a low-paying job after graduation, he removed me from Latin school. I continued my studies at a school for penmanship and arithmetic, led by a reputable educator, Mr. George Brownell, who educated by means of mild and encouraging methods. Under his oversight, I quickly mastered writing, but failed miserably in arithmetic. This is on page 14, middle of the page. At 10 years old, I was taken home to assist my father in his business. He found little demand for his dyeing trade when he arrived in New England, and so he retrained himself as a soap and candle maker. He employed me in a variety of tasks, including cutting the wicks for candles, filling the molds, attending the shop, and running errands. Finding the work dull and repetitive, I preferred the life of a sailor to that of a candle maker, but my father refused to let me go to sea. He was 10 years old. At that time, you could actually go to sea when you were 10 years old. Going to sea back then, and this was in about, let's see, when was Benjamin Franklin born? 1706. So it would be 1716 when he had the desire to go to sea. Back then, sailing ships were like spacecraft today because people would explore the globe. The global economy was being molded by sailing ships because you could get places faster in a sailing ship than you ever could before. You could go to America, you could go back to Europe, you could go to China. So the global economy back then was really being molded by these sailing ships, and it was exciting. He says, since we lived near the water, though, I learned to swim very early in my life and also to manage boats. When using a boat or a canoe with other boys, I found myself in the leadership role, especially in the event of a crisis. I tried to be a good leader among my friends, but I sometimes led them into trouble. Later on, after he led his friends into trouble over something else, he was reprimanded by his father, and father convinced me that nothing could be enduringly useful which was not honestly done. His father knew that he didn't really like candle making, and so what he did, he says, this is on page 17 of the same book, so my father took me for walks around town from time to time. This gave me the chance to observe a variety of furniture and cabinet makers, bricklayers, craftsmen who worked with brass and many others at their work. Father's hope was to find a trade that interested me and would keep me on land instead of at sea. 3 lifelong benefits emerged from these walks together. First, I continued to enjoy watching talented craftsmen at their work with their tools. Second, by observing them, I learned to do odd jobs around my own home when a handyman was not available. Finally, I built more than a few small machines for my science experiments, while the idea was fresh in my mind because I've some idea of how things work. You know, in my life, I can see the same kinds of things happening. I was a carpenter for a couple of years, and that helped me immensely around projects around the house, even though it was not something that I actually wanted to do for a long term. This other book, which is the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin, and it is prepared and annotated with an introduction by the editors of the Papers of Benjamin Franklin. I love this book. After I read the other book, America's Original Entrepreneur, it actually kind of simplified his original autobiography, and that made me want to go back and read his actual autobiography, and his spelling is different and capitalizations are different. Get this one first. I encourage you to read the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin. It's wonderful. If you apply it to yourself and think, what can I do in my life to make myself better? What can I do to improve myself? This is very important for us to be able to do that. I've done this over the years, and it has served me well. And anyway, so I recommend this very highly. We'll talk to you later.